So does Cosatu need to die a slow and agonizing death in order for the trade union movement to decide which side of the bread it's buttered on? Does it get its former stature ever? Or is it part of a bigger plan to really suppress trade unionism? This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by South Africa's most famous unemployed stalwart, Zwelinzima Vavi, former General Secretary of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, for his take on yesterday's court order that Cosatu should hold a special Congress. Before we talk about the Congress, let's talk about you quickly. You left Cosatu, and so you are unemployed. You are one of the nearly 40% of South Africans who doesn't have a paying job.
8.5 million South Africans are unemployed as we speak, and 35% of them. And it's not to be in an awkward position to be among so many, because it demonstrates yet again the real crisis. In fact, number one crisis of South Africa is that of unemployment.
Some people say one of the reasons why there's such a high unemployment rate is because trade unions have made employment so unaffordable for business owners that it's forced business owners to cut back to make their workforces more efficient, leaner, and therefore they've cut jobs, and that's part of the fault of the trade union movement.
No, our unemployment is historic. We come with it from the unemployment crisis, which was, in our view, deliberate.
Why deliberate?
Deliberate in order to create an army of the reserved that are so desperate to look for any kind of employment so that they can be used in the farms, mines, and other atypical forms of employment. And given since 1994, unemployment has been worsening. That's what the statistics are telling us.
Although President Jacob Zuma will tell you you're wrong on that, because more people today have got jobs than ever before. But as a percentage of the population, which has grown exponentially, it's higher.
Of course, it's being absolutely disingenuous. In fact, I call it intellectual hypocrisy to want to say unemployment is better than any other time on the basis of the fact that in 1994 there were about 7 million people employed, and now it's 15 million. The people who make that argument disingenuously forget the fact that in 1994 we had only about 28 million South Africans. We're now at 54 million, and so as a percentage our unemployment has worsened. As a percentage, our crisis of poverty and inequalities have worsened. And that's why we usually say this first phase, that's what I thought that was a consensus around. The first phase was about democracy, was about creating conditions for peace and sustainability. The second phase must be for real stuff, the economic transformation of society, so that we deal with those triple crises that we are referring to.
And which brings us to a really interesting point in the history of the trade union movement, because not since 1994 has the trade union movement in South Africa been so fragmented. Democracy was a great unifier for the trade union movement, and under Jay Naidoo and others, Mbazima Shilowa, Cosatu was a force to be reckoned with. But over the last 5 years or so, there's just been this splintering of the trade union movement, battling, I suppose, for the soul of the working class.
Unfortunately, this is happening not only in South Africa but throughout the African continent. There are about 179 registered trade unions in South Africa. The majority of them are outside the 3 biggest federations. In every stretch of imagination, that's fragmentation. That's a process of disempowering the workers. That's a process of weakening of the voice of the workers. The tragedy that have befallen on Cosatu over the past 3 years simply exacerbated that crisis and makes it very, very worse.
People looking from the outside would look at the internal power struggles at Cosatu, which eventually led to you being ousted, and say, well, this isn't anyone else's fault but the trade union movement itself.
Absolutely. The trade union movement, instead of it focusing on the burning Rome, decided to sideline those real issues of trade unionism to focus on the political arena. And the crisis in Cosatu is as a result of that, defocusing. And we recognized the crisis when we went into our last Congress of Cosatu in 2012. We recognized first that we need a new wage, a new incomes policy in order to bury the apartheid wage structure that creates so much gaps between the highest and the lowest paid workers. We recognized that we needed a national minimum wage, a wall-to-wall centralized bargaining system, a social security system, and a social wage in order to protect the wages of the workers. We recognize that we need a radical economic transformation. Thirdly,
we
recognize we recognize that the unions have been defocused. There's a big social gap between the leaders and the led, and that our leaders and shop stewards were being corrupted by the system. We recognize that we're no longer servicing our members, we're no longer educating our leadership. We recognize all of the structural problems.
The Cosatu annual report last year.
I read that problem.
And how much money was spent on education and training within Cosatu, and how much was spent on wages for senior managers at Cosatu. That's where it has gone wrong. So we've got
First of all, Bruce, how much money was now spent on the courts and paying lawyers?
Completely, millions.
Millions.
Yes.
Millions diverted away from education, training, to fighting endless political battles in the boardroom.
So how do you solve
that problem? And that happens at the expense of driving the agenda of the working people on the ground.
So how do you change it?
Yeah. How do we solve this? And we have been living, and some people are saying, "You mad? Can't you see this Cosatu is finished and it's rotten?" But we still believe that the overwhelming majority of Cosatu members, including inside the unions that are driving the purging, will not agree that Cosatu must be transformed into a sweetheart, toothless bulldog that is standing next to the gate, unable to even bark. They want Cosatu independent. They want Cosatu fighting. They want Cosatu campaigning around the issues. And the victory yesterday in the courts was, for that, very important, because it takes us a step closer in the realization. We have always said that our first prize is to win back Cosatu to where it was in 2012, where it recognized the structural problems.
Could you bring NUMSA back?
Only if we succeed to do so, in my view, can Cosatu be saved.
Who are we in this context?
We're talking about 9 unions that have rallied behind the call for a special national congress, that have said that the basis of unity in the federation must be the last congress resolutions that provided solutions to every of the challenges that we are speaking about. Defocused, people felt that the others had a different program. They had a program to surgically remove the General Secretary and NUMSA, and to create, and that's what they said, we want to dismantle the current federation in this form and create a new one, a new pliant one, a sweetheart, a darling of both government and the employers,
middle of July,
a federation that can never be trusted by the members.
Middle of July, the court order says there must be a Congress, 15th and 16th of July. 13th and 14th. Okay, middle of July.
Yeah.
There's got to be a Congress. Now, one assumes that if you're right in that the leadership of Cosatu is being corrupted, they will bend over backwards and continue to spend the money that is paid by their members into Cosatu coffers to delay the process even further, because if they are truly democratic in the process, they run the risk of losing control of the piggy bank that is Cosatu.
If you can ask those people what they fear more, it's not NUMSA members. They fear their own members, because their own members will never agree that Cosatu must be transformed into a toy telephone.
How then has it been allowed to get to the point where it is where Cosatu is in so much trouble? If the members are so supportive of a true labour movement, how's this process been hijacked?
Because members are never in the boardroom. They get told one side of the story daily. They're being told that Zwelinzima Vavi is planning this and that and that.
So the public fight is important to refocus the question on the issues.
We need to get out of that small boardroom into a real arena where members will be there present to claim their movement as a fighting tool in their hands.
What happens if it doesn't work?
If it doesn't work, then the issue of forming an alternative federation can not be postponed, unfortunately.
So you might go and talk to Joseph Mutunjwa, for example. You've got NUMSA, you've got the other groupings. You could then start a rival movement.
If we can't win back NUMSA back into the federation, how do you go back?
Yeah.
Without 340,000, how do you justify, how do you legitimize the chopping of 340,000 workers? Now they have become 365, growing faster than any other time, even outside Cosatu. We were told that it is cold outside the ANC. Nonsense, not anymore. They have grown to 365. How do you legitimize the chopping of 365,000 and walk in and say you want to build unity? There can be no such unity. Such unity is going to be fast. Our precondition where we stand is that NUMSA must be part of that Congress, or that Congress is not going to be a solution to the crisis that is facing the federation.
So it's make or break time then?
It's a make or break time.
Absolutely.
And if that is not possible, I don't know what other leaders in the other unions will think, but for me, it will be the end of the road. I can never, ever live with my conscience and want to go and appeal and save my job and my skin.
But it's not about the job.
It's not about it. It's about whether there will be unity of workers under an umbrella of Cosatu that is an independent fighting organization or not.
You look at the good life that Jay Naidoo is living. He's traveling all over the world. He's bought a farm in the Eastern Free State. He's going to have all sorts of people from all over the world coming to have conversations. Mbazima Shalowa has got his own wine label, Epicurean. He lives the good life. He became the Premier of Gauteng. Does it ever become tempting to step back and say, oh, these trade union guys are difficult. Why don't I go and get something more comfortable?
No, I haven't. I have declined a possibility that was almost guaranteed to serve in the National Executive Committee that would have opened doors for me to go into cabinet. I was offered in a position into cabinet. I declined it. I should have walked into the Central Committee of the SACP to open doors for me. I didn't, and I've stood in a principle that says the General Secretary, the President of Cosatu, as the public faces of people who articulate the policies of the organization on daily basis must never be compromised by the two heads of having to speak ban labor brokers in the morning, and suddenly in the afternoon, because of the decision of the other collective they also members of, you're no longer talking total ban, you're talking regulating. I can never speak swimming pool this morning and later in the evening I talk fire pool. I know it's completely compromising, and that's why I've said, at least for the position of the President and General Secretary, leave them serving Cosatu full time, just like you don't want the ANC president being in the Central Committee of the party and speaking about socialism in the morning, and in the afternoon speaking about the incredible importance of maintaining sound macroeconomic policies under a system of capitalism.
Zwelinzima Vavi, we must leave it there. I thank you. Zwelinzima Vavi, former General Secretary of Cosatu, the Congress of South African Trade Unions. This is going to be a fight worth watching, because it is a fight for the very soul of the workers movement in South Africa. Who will prevail and who will fail? Well, we watch this space very, very closely. Zwelinzima Vavi, nice to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Nice to see you. And to you, good night. And have a good night. We'll give you a good night hug as well, but that wouldn't be appropriate. Goodbye.